So my birthday is approaching in a few days. As a matter of fact, by the time I post this video, it would already be my birthday. And I still can't believe that I am in the final year of my 30s. Every year around this time, I ask my mom if she is sure they put the right date on my birth certificate, because ain't no way in the world. I was born in 86. There's no way that I'm 39. I don't feel mature enough to be this old. But anyway, last week Friday, I got together with a handful of my close friends and we went out to dinner. And I posed this question to them and I asked, "Who are you?" I challenged each of them to describe who they are without mentioning their marital status, whether or not they had kids, or what they did for work. And I structured the question this way because having been in HR for the last 6 years, I understand that people really don't know who they are beyond what they've achieved academically or professionally, or what their status is as spouses or parents. So because this is such a difficult question to answer, because it is, their responses were slow, but they came. And the mixture of responses I got were adventurous, hobby hoppers, they know who they are, and this love for helping people. What I don't think they realized, though, is while they were describing who they are, they were also experiencing this revelation of their purpose. Purpose is the whole reason for our existence. Purpose goes beyond what we accomplish. If our life's purpose was built on getting married, having kids, starting a business, or excelling in school or in our careers, once those things have been achieved, there would be no other reason for us to be here. Life essentially would be meaningless, right? Purpose, I'm understanding and I'm learning, it's not a state of doing, but it's a state of being. Purpose also doesn't just apply to one particular area of our lives. It applies to every facet of our lives. And I believe that as believers, once we come to the understanding that our God, this big God that we serve, is the most purposeful being ever, we would begin to look at the events in our lives a little bit differently. Purpose is the thing that we were created for. It's the element of our lives that has the biggest impact on the people around us. Ultimately, our purpose as believers is to reflect the character and the nature of God. But this isn't just about attending church or following religious or spiritual practices. It's about living in such a way that our purpose is reflected in every single thing we do. Nothing in our life happens without God's authorization. Despite how the enemy behaves, he does not have a blank check. 1 Chronicles 29:11 through 12 tells us that everything in heaven and on earth belongs to God, and that he is the head over all. When we realize that, we then begin to understand that even the problems or the storms in our lives serve specific purposes. We also understand that the enemy may send some problems our way for one purpose, but God will allow and use that very problem for a completely different purpose. A perfect example of this is found in Genesis 50, verse 20, where Joseph reveals himself to his brothers, and he tells them that what it is they meant for evil and for his destruction is the very thing God purposed for his good and the good of the millions of people he ended up saving. Now notice, I said that the enemy may send some problems. Some of the storms that show up in our lives have nothing to do with Satan and everything to do with the choices we make. Doing the free ride at 5 for stealing is not a storm, baby. That's a consequence of actions. But anyway, the storms and challenges that arise despite our best efforts to drink water and mind our business, those are the ones that are present for a purpose. And oftentimes that purpose is to refine us and prune us so that we become better at doing life. A lot of people don't know how to do life. We know how to do church. We don't know how to do life. There is no place in our lives, though, for stagnation. Even when God tells us to stand still, he also says we are to see, to look, and seek out and expect his salvation. John 15:2 tells us that every branch in Christ that doesn't bear fruit, God will remove. Problems are often the shares that God uses to prune us so that we bear this more fruit he talks about. This is why the deceptive view that peace is the absence of problems is such a dangerous one. Now, notwithstanding the consequences of our actions, there are 3 things that I am learning about our purpose that problems are designed to teach us. Straight out the gate, problems, and based on our responses to them, they tell us where we are in our faith. Faith is a spiritual muscle, one that's just like our physical ones that require frequent use through exercise. Everything that God has created us to do and to become depends on faith. It depends on what we believe in. Do we trust God more than what our 5 senses reveal to us? Can he trust us to stand firm on our awareness and knowledge of his character and his nature and his word, despite what we see, hear, and feel? The storms of life are designed to determine if we truly believe what we say we believe. We're all familiar, or should be familiar, with the story of Jesus calming the storm. It's found in Matthew 4:35 through 41. The disciples were on a boat crossing the Sea of Galilee. Jesus was in the stern of the boat asleep on one cushion when what was likened to a hurricane just started up. The disciples started to freak out and they pretty much rush up on Jesus and ask him, like, Lord, you slow or you blind? Because there's no way in the world you can't see what's going on with this storm and how this boat almost sunk. What got me with this passage, though, is found in verse 40. It's after Jesus would have rebuked the storm and everything returned to a very calm state. Jesus then turned to his disciples and asked them why they were so afraid and if they still have no faith. Part of preparing for this particular episode required that I conducted some additional research on Jesus' miracles. And guess what I found? You would think that by the way the disciples reacted, that they'd never seen Jesus perform a miracle before, like this would have been the very first thing they saw him do. The reality, though, is before this particular hurricane incident, they had seen Jesus heal the man with leprosy, the paralytic man, Peter's mother-in-law. He had cast out demons in this man in Capernaum. He had healed and delivered large crowds of people, and he had already turned water into wine. They had witnessed all of these things. The problems of life appear to test if we still believe. The test of faith is never so that we can remain where we are, but it's to prepare us for what's next. You don't know that your car needs a wheel alignment until you notice you keep needing to change the tires on one side of it, or whenever you're driving, it pulls to a particular side. The parts of our lives that are easily susceptible to the effects of life storms are the ones that need realignment and reinforcement. For me, when I find myself becoming easily irritated and I'm constantly mulling over an unpleasant encounter or exchange with someone, I know that I'm playing around with bitterness and I am slowly creating an opening for unforgiveness. If there is constant friction in your marriage and you keep hoping that your spouse would change, you probably need to ask God where it is that you need to mature. A constant challenge with money, for example, may not be an issue of lack or needing another job, but it may be an issue of poor stewardship. Romantic relationships that keep ending in drama or heartbreak may mean that you need to mature in discernment, but also that you need to learn contentment with singleness in this particular season of your life. Our purpose is never for us, and that's one thing that I'm learning, and I'm having to understand that it's not all about me. Who we are is always for someone else's benefit. This requires a level of selflessness that is only developed through spiritual maturity. Our natural tendency is to make everything about us, which is why both success and poverty are very dangerous extremes for so many people. When we see that we continuously face the same challenge in a particular area, it's because we're not growing or improving in that area. It's interesting to note that the first person Jesus encountered after calming the storm and crossing the Sea of Galilee was Legion, and the full story is found in Mark 5. It's not impossible to think that Satan sent that storm to deter Jesus and the disciples because his arrival on that shore would lead to hell losing a valuable host, one they inhabited and tormented for years. There are times when you do everything you know you're supposed to. You stand in faith, you forgive, you exercise all the fruits of the Spirit, and yet the storms don't just come, them buggers intensify. It is in these instances that your spirit knows that you're on the right track and that hell is simply throwing a temper tantrum. The enemy knows he cannot change the destination because that's purposed by God, babes. He does, however, deploy storms to discourage us so that we abandon the journey. You know that you're headed in the right direction when every word of confirmation you receive tells you something that is completely contrary to what it is your five senses are telling you, that tells you something completely contrary to what it is you hear and what it is you see and how it is you feel. Peace lets us know that despite the purpose of the storm or the problem we face, it's God's purpose that will always prevail. If the disciples had trusted that they were going to accomplish all the things Jesus said they would in the future and after his crucifixion, they would have known that that storm couldn't do anything to them. Peace allows us to take our cues from God and know that because he is with us, we have no need to react or respond in fear. If Jesus could sleep during a Category 5 hurricane, we could be at peace and we could rest when life storms arise.